and welcome to the Narrowing Path, Walking the Spiritual Walk. My name is Steve Van Einstein. Thank y'all for joining me again for June 24th's reading of James Allen's Daily Meditations. So far, it's been a great month. It's been a great year. We're coming on to finishing up the first half of the year of a daily reading by James Allen every day. And there's been a lot of ups and downs, and it's been a lot of different focuses and concentrations. And let me tell you, it's been a journey for me. I've greatly enjoyed it so far, and I am glad to see people jumping on with me and taking a listen. So hopefully, it's a benefit to you as much as it is as it is to me. So thank y'all so much. So this will be fresh to you and fresh to me, meaning this will be the first time that I hear or read this podcast right here on the air with you. So you'll get my genuine response, reactions, observations, and what I relate to about the reading. So here we go. This is June 24th's reading of James Allen's Daily Meditation. Learn the lessons of virtue, and thus build up in the strength of knowledge. Where love is, God is, and where goodness lives, there Christ abides, and he who daily strives gainst self and selfishness, shaping his mind for truth and purity, and shall surely find the Master's presence in his inmost heart. God shall be one with him and not apart. Who overcomes himself and makes his life godlike and holy, banishing all strife. Happy and everlasting his release from pain and sorrow, who doth conquer sin. To the pure heart comes God and dwells therein. He only who the path of good hath trod hath found the life that's hid with Christ in God. Make pure thy heart, and thou wilt make thy life rich, sweet, and beautiful, unmarred by strife. So we got some poetry today. It's interesting. This one, bear with me while I break this one down. You're gonna hear some repeats, and I have a tendency to go with the rhyme, and that's not necessarily how this is structured. If you go and look it up, or you have a copy of the meditations that you're potentially reading along with, you'll see that the lines and the pairing, they're not complete sentences. It's it's pretty free forming poetry. So here we go. We'll go ahead and we'll give this a shot, and we'll see what's going on. Overall, the impression that I got that those who strive for truth and purity and will actually come into one with God's will, with God himself, almost, from it says, we'll feel that presence of peace in our own hearts, and we'll be blessed with a life that's good. So let's see where this brings us here. The first line, opener: learn the lessons of virtue, and thus build up in the strength of knowledge. Right? So every time you practice a virtue, every time you choose to follow a spiritual principle rather than take your normal self-serving actions, you build up in the strength of knowledge. You solidify yourself in the spiritual path. You solidify the road you're taking. You build your character instead of destroy your character. So every time you practice virtues, every time you choose the spiritual thing, which is a virtuous act, you gain the strength of knowledge. Now, to the poetry. So bear with me. I'm not a practice reader of poetry. So here we go. Where love is, God is, and where goodness lives, there Christ abides, and he who daily strives against self and selfishness, shaping his mind for truth and purity, shall surely find. Okay, so we're going to have to break this up a little differently than the way I just read it, so I apologize for that. Where love is, God is, and where goodness lives, there Christ abides. Where love is, God is. So when you practice love, when you practice holding love in your heart and you make decisions from love, that's practicing God's will. That's God manifesting through you. That's practice. I like to call it making space for God to work through you in your life, for God to work through your life, right? And that's where goodness lives. Where love is, God is, and where goodness lives, right? So all that is good, all that is goodness is born out of love. And that's where God resides. Where goodness lives, there Christ abides. And he who daily strives against self and selfishness. So those who are actively not engaging in the selfishness and not engaging in the self of any form, not serving yourself, and shaping his mind for truth and purity. So when you strive for truth and purity, you will automatically go against yourself. You'll automatically go against your own selfish intentions. You'll automatically go against your own self-serving motives. And yeah, when you strive for truth and purity, sorry, this is a harder one to follow. Now he goes on to say, shall surely find. So those who strive for truth and purity and go against self and selfishness shall surely find the master's presence in his innermost heart. So practice. There's there's something out there called practicing the presence of God, which is about just sitting with God, which is about just sitting in peace, sitting in silence. The practice of sitting. It's very sounds very weird when you say it like that, I guess, but that's what it's about. To practice the presence of God in your life. And you'll find that in your inmost heart when you're striving for that truth and that purity. Goes on to say, God shall be one with him and not apart, who overcomes himself and makes his life godlike and holy, banishing all strife. So, I mean, that's encouraging stuff right there, right? So God will walk with you when you are practicing that selfless life, when you're practicing serving God, serving others, serving the universe, the source, the whatever you'd like to encapsulate it with. Again, I primarily use the terminology of God because that's the culture I was raised in, but whatever that power greater than yourself is, right? That walks with you. You're following that grand plan, um that intention for your life. Who overcomes himself. That's the biggest thing we've got to do, guys. That's the biggest thing I have to do, and that I make a pointed effort to do daily, is to overcome my own selfish intentions, my own selfish pursuits, my own selfishness in general. And I strive and I aim for that godlike and holy life. And the closer I get to that, the less pain I have, the less sorrow I have. And he says here, banishing all strife. And that's true. I don't live a perfect life. I fall down often, but when I can do this, when I choose to follow that righteous path, I find that banishing all strife, I find more peace. All right. Let me go into the second half of this main reading here. Happy and everlasting his release from pain and sorrow who doth conquer sin. So, for those that don't embrace their sins anymore in the sense of practicing them regularly, for those who will walk through life with the intention to follow God's will in their life and the willingness to practice this spiritual way of living, these spiritual principles. For those who are willing to do that and those who do that and take the actions, we become released from that pain and that sorrow. We find freedom in this world, in this life. It's pretty amazing. To the pure heart comes God and dwells therein. So God comes into our lives. This is being poetic. There's a lot involved here, but when we can come from that place of love, like it said in the beginning, that's where God is. That's where goodness is. That's where righteousness is. That's where the truth of living is when we can welcome that spiritual way of living, and God can work through us regularly. He only who the path of good hath trod. So only those who walk this spiritual way of living, only those who choose to follow this way of life, have found the life that's hid with Christ in God. That's an interesting phrase. Hath found the life that's hid with Christ in God. So they found the life that Christ possessed. And it's all given and made available to us in God, in this being, this power greater than ourselves. When we aim to live a Christ-like life, when we want that Christ-like character, we find that love, that peace, that freedom through God as He works through us. We find that freedom from the material world. We find that everlasting, eternal peace that we've been talking about the last couple of days. And what a beautiful thing that is. So, this is the last two lines here. I really like these, actually. So, make pure thy heart, and thou wilt make thy life rich, sweet, and beautiful, unmarred by strife. So when we choose to walk this path, when we choose to do that heavy lifting of doing the actual work, when we we start with self-control and we change the actions so we can see the thoughts, and we change the thoughts that drive the actions, and then when we change the intention behind those thoughts, and we move to a life of love with the intention only to do the right thing and to be of service. We wake up one day and we find that we live a life that's rich, sweet, and beautiful, and unmarred by strife. We're able to enjoy the life that we're a part of. We're able to enjoy this living that I know for me, I was searching for a very, very long time. So it's good reading. I like today's. It always throws me for a loop when he changes it up, but a little bit of change keeps your attention, doesn't it? At least it keeps mine. So, and I actually really enjoy reading poetry. I like the rhyming couplets and the actual cadence and the stanza. I like all the concepts of poetry. It's just to get thrown a curveball when you're used to just reading the regular is pretty get you thinking, right? So, but it was fantastic as always. When we choose to walk this spiritual life, God comes through us into our hearts. So, thank y'all for joining me today, though. I'm very excited to continue on with the rest of this month and finish out this first half of the year. And we'll see what tomorrow brings us. So, until next time, thanks.